Before this episode begins, I decided to delay my Hamster and Gretel episode a little later because since these news articles came up on my Twitter, I chose to do a special episode at the last minute to look into some special updates for Hamster and Gretel and a reveal of a lost project that Dan and Swampy were involved with long before Phineas and Ferb was created. Thank you for understanding, and I appreciate your patience. And now, our podcast presentation. Welcome to a special episode of the Danville Discussion, a podcast about all things related to Phineas and Ferb. My name is Caleb Dirksen, and some of you may know me from my YouTube channel of the same name, home of some web series related to animation such as Caleb Reviews. If this is your first time with the Danville Discussion, well, let me tell you all about what I do here. I go through each episode of Phineas and Ferb, and I define all the cultural references, songs, jokes, gags, some fun facts, and anything else I can find, sometimes give out my memories of first watching the episode, and in the end, I'm gonna give each episode a roller coaster rating. But with this episode, I was supposed to do a Hamster and Gretel discussion, but now that has to wait a little later because these news pieces came up on my Twitter timeline, and I had to rearrange my plans at the last minute to talk about them. And I'm gonna be covering the following, which includes the reveals of some episode titles and plot details for the Hamster and Gretel episodes for September, and then I'm gonna reveal the discovery of a lost 90s project that Dan Povenmire and Jeff Swampy Marsh were part of before they went on to bring Phineas and Ferb to life. If you want to check out more episodes of the Danville Discussion, then go to anchor.fm/Caleb-Dirksen and it'll take you directly to the Danville Discussion website on Anchor. You can also share your feedback about the news we discuss in this episode by emailing us at danvillediscussion@gmail.com with the words "The Danville Discussion News" in the subject line. Now let's start this off with our first news story, talking about Hamster and Gretel. Of course, Hamster and Gretel premiered not too long ago on August 12th, and its first 5 episodes were even released on Disney Plus on August 17th, with the last few having yet to air on Disney Channel every week. But the last one of those first 5 episodes is going to be mentioned now, as I'm going to reveal the episode titles and synopsis of the episodes that are going to be airing in September. As usual, the show will be airing new episodes every Saturday at 9:30 a.m. Eastern on Disney Channel, with a rerun of said episodes airing later at night in case you Americans miss it in the morning. And these reveals are coming from my source here on the Disney Animation Promos Twitter account, and here they are. On Saturday, September 3rd, and this is the last one that was released on Disney Plus for early access, on this day we have Comic Shop Copycat. Hamster and Gretel must defeat a comic book-inspired cat villain. Nay, it ain't so. Hamster and Gretel face a half-human, half-horse villain who loves to party. And this implies that it's neigh as in the sound that a horse makes. Then on September 10th, there's gonna be Saturday Homecoming Fever. Hamster and Gretel must save the homecoming dance at the high school. Dr. Eelgood. Hamster and Gretel encounter a mutant eel. Then afterwards on September 17th we got the opposite of smart. Churro becomes an internet sensation, and this might be similar to Dr. Doofenshmirtz becoming an internet sensation in Phineas and Ferb. Birthday Besties. Gretel has her hands full at Bailey's birthday party. And finally, on September 24th, we're getting I'm Bored. Gretel is bored, and Hamster and Gretel meet a big otter. Cutie and the Beast. In Vegas, Hamster and Gretel face their biggest test. And I thought that the latter segment would be about the giant otter, hence the word beast. Also, the title of the last segment really reminds me of another cartoon episode with the same title, with the Animaniacs episode Cutie and the Beast, which itself is a parody of the Disney animated feature Beauty and the Beast, and also features the Tasmanian Devil from the Looney Tunes as the Beast, and Dot Warner is in the role of Belle.
Who are you?
We're the Warner Brothers.
I'm Yakko.
I'm Wacko.
And I'm Princess Angelina
She's Dot.
No, I'm Princess Angelina Contessa Louisa Frances. No, I'm in love.
You're trespassing. Now go.
Now that's tall, dark, and handsome.
Don't forget flea-ridden.
But those are the episode reveals, and I'll give you my thoughts later on when I watch them. Now, the other story I have right here is definitely the one that caught my eye the most, and every episode in which I give out some news updates surrounding the Dwampyverse, I'm going to be calling this top subject Caleb's Catch of the Week. And for Caleb's Catch of the Week, this one came up on Twitter, and I first heard about this from the Phineas and Ferb Wiki Twitter account, which is affiliated with Fandom. They said that this is a piece of lost media that, surprisingly enough, Dan Povenmire and Jeff Swampy Marsh had worked on back in the 1990s while they were working on The Simpsons, and as Phineas and Ferb began to come into fruition because the latter show began in work as early as 1993. And this year, 2022, has been pretty big on lost media finds. The original 1964 Jeopardy pilot, the 1982 Macy's Thanksgiving Parade, Marble Madness 2, episode 847 of Sesame Street, some lost footage of Shrek with Chris Farley, the animatic for Sony Animation's canceled Popeye movie, and this month, recently, we have a lost pilot that Dan and Swampy didn't create, but rather worked on as freelance crew members, and I am referring to the lost pilot for a failed American live-action and animated version of Sailor Moon. Now, this pilot is also referred to as Saban Moon to distinguish itself from the original Japanese anime it's loosely adapting, which in turn is based on the manga, because Haim Saban was involved with this, the same person who produced the Power Rangers franchise. And the person responsible for finding this lost media is a YouTuber by the name of Ray Mona, who is also known to discover some other lost media like the unreleased video game of Mean Girls. And by the way, I'm reading all this from my source here on The Verge, as it then states, the story of the Americanized Sailor Moon starts in 1993, about 2 years before the debut of the dubbed Sailor Moon that we know today. At the time, animation studio Toon Makers teamed up with Renaissance Atlantic Entertainment, the producers behind the original Power Rangers, in a bid to make an English version of the series. The two companies pitched a project that blends live action with animation that ultimately never took off. We only got a glimpse of what came out of the project in a brief music video shown at an anime convention in the 90s. But now we have the first full episode. In a two-part YouTube video series that takes place over the span of several months, Ray Mona details her journey to uncover Saban Moon. With the help of Kotaku reporter Cecilia D'Anastasio, who attempted to find the long-lost episode in 2018, she got former Bandai America president Frank Ward's approval to obtain a copy of the footage from the Library of Congress that she included in her video. And they also say that the live-action parts are when the Sailor Scouts are in their normal identities on Earth, but then it transitions to animation when they become superheroes and go into space, swapping the original starry-eyed anime look of Sailor Moon's characters for something you'd see in a classic Disney movie. Speaking of the video, you should definitely check it out to learn more about the history of the American pilot. And for the highlight of this podcast news, it was mentioned in part 2 of said video that Dan and Swampy, the duo who later made Phineas and Ferb, did have a part in this as freelancers during their period working on The Simpsons. In fact, I've got a Twitter thread right here from the Phineas and Ferb wiki account, which I mentioned earlier, and it says, in a search for a notorious pitch pilot for a failed American version, staffers were able to confirm Dan and Swampy worked freelance on it during during their time on The Simpsons. Another staffer involved also claims that Dan and Swampy worked with them on an anti-drug PSA animated in Russia, but then again he also claims said PSA won an award that was presented to them directly by President Bill Clinton. The PSA is real, but we can find no concrete connection between either Dan and Swampy or President Clinton, and feel this fellow is probably dropping names in an effort to pad his resume, but we'd be happy to be proven wrong. And the cast of the American pilot includes Stephanie Dicker as Victoria or Sailor Moon, Melinda Mindy Cohen as Blue or Sailor Mercury, Danny DeLacy as Dana or Sailor Mars, Tommy Adrian George as Lita or Sailor Jupiter, Melanie Britt as Luna, the talking cat who gives the Sailor Scouts advice, Adrienne Barbeau as Queen Serenity and the villain Queen Beryl, and Patricia Alice Albrecht as the narrator, and the actors who played Prince Darien and Sailor Venus were unable to be confirmed in the video. Plus, the network that it was supposed to be greenlit for was the Fox Kids Saturday morning schedule in the fall of 1994. This video also shows the theme song music video, as well as the 12-minute pilot episode in its entirety. Now, I'm gonna get this out of the way real quick. I have not seen a full episode of the Sailor Moon anime yet. I have heard a lot about it, many people have had nostalgia for it, and I remember the English dub from Deke airing on YTV in Canada since as a Canadian I grew up with the channel, but still, I never took the time to watch the show yet. I'll eventually watch the anime when I have the time. But what are my thoughts on the American pilot? My thoughts on the theme song are that it's a solid 90s pop rock tune that reminds me of the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers theme.
Sailor! Sailor Moon! Sailor! Sailor Moon!
And for the episode itself, I can tell how different it is compared to the original anime in terms of layout and character designs. I already mentioned the transitions between live action and animation in here, but admittedly, I found Sailor Moon's American design to actually be kinda adorable. I thought her design was kinda cute and it really made me blush a bit. And as for how they described the look of it as something that would look like a classic Disney movie, I'd say it's more obvious on Prince Darien and Queen Beryl. Except the animation itself does look kinda cheap, as with certain other cartoon shows from the 80s and 90s like He-Man, Thundercats, and a few others. And in itself, yeah, it can be cheesy at times with its action and some of the voice acting, but it's enjoyably cheesy.
The royal families must be saved! It's up to you to pilot the galleon.
Same with Power Rangers with all its different seasons, and for the latter, I mostly grew up with whatever Disney did for Jetix before it became Disney XD as a result of a merger with Toon Disney. But yeah, those are my general thoughts on Saban Moon, and I have yet to watch the Sailor Moon anime still, but like I said, the American pilot is cheesy, but an enjoyable kind of cheesy. And if you want to watch both pieces of the lost footage for Saban Moon with the theme song and the pilot, they're both free on YouTube. And thank you Raymona for finding this lost media, and also Dan, Swampy, I was surprised when I heard that you guys were freelancers on this failed pilot. So that's Saban Moon, the failed American version of the Japanese Sailor Moon that has now seen the light of day once again as yet another discovered piece of lost media on the internet. And that's all the news there is for this special episode, so thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Danville Discussion. As for me, you can find me on my Facebook page at Real Caleb Dirksen, on my Twitter, Tumblr, and TikTok pages at CalebDirksen2 with the number 2, on my alternate Twitter page at Caleb the PNF Guy, on my Instagram pages at Caleb.Dirksen for my main page, or at Caleb Flynn Fletcher for my alternate page, and on my DeviantArt page at CalebDirksen20. You can also find me on Discord by entering the username Caleb Dirksen in 2 words, and then the code number 4600. If you go to the invite link in the description below, it'll also invite you to my Discord server so that you can talk with me about anything, including this podcast or my other content. You can also find me on YouTube. Just search for Caleb Dirksen and look for the icon of me as a soldier. As for this podcast, we are available to listen on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Amazon Music, Audible, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and you can also find us on Anchor by using your Apple or Android device or going on the web at anchor.fm/Caleb-Dirksen. It'll take you directly to the Danville Discussion page. If you're listening to this podcast on Apple Podcasts or any other podcast browser, would you be able to do us a favor and please rate and review this podcast? That would be great as long as it's respectful and not a case of cyberbullying. And if you are listening to this podcast as a video on YouTube, then please smash that like button on our video and leave us a little comment with your thoughts about the news that I've talked about. You can also share your feedback by emailing us at danvillediscussion@gmail.com with the Danville Discussion News in the subject line. Join us next time in at least a few days, and I'm going to get into the first episode of Hamster and Gretel for real. Now tune in next time for the latest episode of the Danville Discussion and all things related to Phineas and Ferb and beyond. And with that said, thank you so much for listening, and until then, this is Caleb, over and out. This podcast was created strictly and only for entertainment and information purposes. It is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company, Disney Television Animation, or their affiliates. All and any names, images, clips, sounds, or other items related to Phineas and Ferb, Milo Murphy's Law, Hamster and Gretel, and other Disney properties are trademarks and or copyrights of their respective holders. All original content from this podcast is the intellectual property of the Danville Discussion and the host or hosts running the podcast unless otherwise noted.